This is Kerri Jansen.
And I'm Matt Davenport.
As you may have heard, C&EN is launching the first full episode of its new podcast later this month.
Yeah, the podcast is called Stereochemistry, and we are very excited about it.
But right now, we wanted to tell you about an upcoming event during the American Chemical Society National Meeting in New Orleans. C&EN and the ACS Women Chemists Committee have organized a symposium to discuss sexual harassment in chemistry. I sat down with C&EN's Linda Wang to learn more about the event. Well, thanks for joining me, Linda. Can you tell us what can we expect from this event?
We're going to have two great sessions, a morning session that is going to be focusing on the psychology and sociology of sexual harassment. And one of our speakers, Vicki Magley, she's a psychologist from the University of Connecticut. She'll be talking about how understanding why sexual harassment occurs can help organizations prevent it from happening. And in the afternoon, we're going to be focusing on how universities and institutions are working to stop sexual harassment in their departments and at scientific meetings. For example, we're going to be hearing from Billy Williams of the American Geophysical Union about the steps that their society has been taking to prevent sexual harassment at their annual meetings.
And we'll actually be discussing some of those efforts in one of the first episodes of the podcast. Now, Linda, you've reported on this subject before. You and Andrea Widener wrote the cover story, Confronting Sexual Harassment in Chemistry, that came out last fall. Was there anything that you learned from reporting that story that you hope will be part of the discussion at the ACS meeting?
I think one of the things that really came out in a lot of our interviews is that sexual harassment survivors, even though there are means to report, it's still very hard psychologically for them to report because there's so much of a power imbalance between them and often the person who's harassing them. One of the things that I would love to find out is, how do we break down that barrier to make it comfortable for the victims to come forward and, not be terrified that it's going to destroy their careers. One of the things that really resonated with me when I was interviewing sexual harassment survivors is that people said that they wish they had come forward because if they did, then they could have helped prevent sexual harassment from happening to another woman. After the story, we got a lot of people emailing us and saying how thankful they are that we're raising awareness of this issue within chemistry. And we continue to get people emailing us and letting us know that they've experienced sexual harassment in their workplace, whether it's in academia, and we've also had people in industry. And it's not just women that experience sexual harassment. We've also had men come forward and tell us that they've been victims of sexual harassment themselves. So I think it's had a really big impact on the community. And I'm really glad to see people coming together and having discussions about this.
The symposium is called Science of Sexual Harassment. It's on March 19th, starting at 9 a.m., and it's free to attend.
For people who can't make it to the symposium, we are working with other groups at ACS to record the session and make it available online after the national meeting. We'll share more details on that as soon as we have them.
You can also read last year's cover story on sexual harassment in chemistry if you haven't already. That's available on C&EN's website. We've got a link in the description. And Linda and Andrea are continuing to follow this subject in their reporting, so I'll be catching up with them both in an upcoming episode of the podcast.
To make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to Stereochemistry now on iTunes, Google Play, or TuneIn.
Thanks for listening.